Early in my career as a psychiatric nurse, I met a patient named Marion Duchene at a residential mental health facility. He wouldn't speak, even though doctors couldn't find any physical reason why. He had spoken normally before and seemed quite ordinary except for his impressive height, close to 7 feet tall. Raised in the South, he joined the military but vanished without a trace one night. He was declared missing from duty and eventually presumed dead. 10 years later, a tall, dusty man walked into the emergency room of a Veterans Affairs hospital in my region. He spoke a single chilling sentence to the receptionist. "My name is Marion Duchene, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke aloud. He was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported missing in. No recent activity was found on his social security number, and he didn't have any identification. However, they were able to confirm his identity, I believe, through fingerprints. His family was contacted, but they said they had already mourned their loss, and that whoever this man claiming to be Marion was, it couldn't possibly be him. They asked not to be contacted again. Marion spent his days constantly pacing, his mouth moving silently as if he were talking or muttering to himself. He had an unsettling habit of throwing his head back and opening his mouth wide as if he were laughing heartily, but no sound came out. When I talked to him, he seemed to listen, occasionally throwing his head back in that silent, laughter-like way. We tried various medications on him, but they had no effect, positive or negative. Occupational therapy was a waste of time as well. Marion would just grin and, unless specifically told to stay put, would get up and start pacing again. On my last day at that job, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back in that silent laugh. Years later, I still wonder if I was caring for a ghost all along. The truth remains a mystery. Before we jump into our second story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying the content. Stay tuned for more updates. Our family camping trip in New Mexico took a strange turn one night. We were a group of about 10, enjoying a bonfire with another group of campers nearby. Laughter and stories filled the air as we roasted marshmallows. Suddenly, a sound froze us all in our tracks. A young girl's voice calling for help. There weren't any children in either group, but the voice was clear. We decided to check things out together, heading towards the source of the cries. What we saw in a nearby field sent shivers down our spines. Standing far away, maybe 100 feet from us, was a tall, thin figure. It was completely white, almost glowing in the darkness. We all agreed it looked like a person, but unnaturally tall and pale. As we cautiously approached, the figure did something unexpected. It began to move away from us, retreating deeper into the trees until it vanished completely. We were left feeling spooked and confused. Throughout the night, the cries of the little girl continued to echo, making sleep nearly impossible. The peaceful camping trip had turned into an unsettling experience. We were driving my friend's really old beat-up Subaru through a massive graveyard. We parked and walked down a slope to a small lake. On the other side, we saw a figure sitting on a rock. It was dressed completely in black, and all we could tell was it looked like a man with an old-fashioned hat. We stupidly waved and shouted, "Hi!" But the figure didn't answer and just stayed sitting on the rock. Suddenly, it jumped up and ran towards us, but across the water. Then, in the middle of the lake, it just disappeared. We were scared and ran back to the car. The car wouldn't start, and we heard banging noises coming from the back every few seconds. We couldn't see anyone outside in the dark, but something was definitely making noise. I tried calling my mum for help, but none of our phones had any signal. We spent the next half hour freaking out and trying to start the car. The banging stopped eventually, but it felt really weird and heavy all around us. Finally, the car roared to life, and we sped out of the cemetery as fast as we could. The moment we passed the gates, our phones all started working again. One thing for sure, there was definitely something strange out there, and it wasn't any kind of animal or person. We were on a family road trip, me at 16 and my sister 20. It was late, but tiredness hadn't dulled our senses. Cruising down the interstate, we needed gas and a bathroom break. The only rest stop for miles loomed ahead. Something felt off as we pulled in. We'd seen plenty of late-night rest stops, but this one sent shivers down our spines. There was a van full of teenagers at the gas pumps, but they looked spooked. I watched as they abandoned their attempt to fill up and sped off in a hurry. In front of us, a small grey car sat at a pump, with two young men standing motionless next to it. The silence was thick and unsettling. They didn't talk, weren't on their phones, just stood there, frozen like statues. Mom and sister went inside, leaving me on guard duty in the car. They didn't stay long. Bursting back into the car, panic etched on their faces, they scrambled in. Just then, the two men slowly turned their heads, their bodies remaining completely rigid. As they looked at us, a wave of terror washed over all of us. Their eyes. They were bottomless pits of darkness, devoid of any light, any reflection. Just emptiness. We didn't waste a second. Foot on the gas, we tore out of there, not stopping until we reached the safety of the next town. But the most unsettling part was yet to come. The rest stop vanished. We knew exactly where it should have been on the interstate, but it was gone. No trace on Google Maps, no listing on paper maps, nothing. We even asked locals about the strange gas station on that stretch of road, but our questions were met with blank stares. To this day, whenever we traveled that route, there's no rest stop. It's as if that night it simply never existed. Things got weird after my mum and dad split up when I was a teenager. I lived with my mum, and that's when all this spooky stuff started happening. Sometimes I'd be reading in bed when the room would suddenly get super cold. Then it would feel like something or someone really hated me and was staring right at me. It freaked me out so much I'd leave the room and come back later. During the daytime too, I'd sometimes see a shadowy figure moving along the walls of my room. Even creepier, there were times when something seemed to be pretending to be my dog. I'd hear a really deep growl coming from under my bed, but my dog couldn't make a noise that low. It sounded like a giant dog, or maybe even a person trying to sound like a dog. Other times, my actual dog would whimper and pace in the room next door, but wouldn't come when I called him. It was like he was scared of something in the hallway. Guess what? All this spooky stuff just stopped once I moved in with my dad. Weird, right? If you want to see more of the most frightening horror videos, check out our previous videos and subscribe to be notified of new, terrifying experiences. Until we meet again, be cautious of the supernatural and be careful when navigating through dark and eerie situations.